Come see us do stand-up in Baltimore, Hartford, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, and San Jose, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for the tickets. You know how they do the oil pipelines and the gas pipelines? And a couple years ago, I was involved in the DAPL protests. And the problem is they put these pipelines where people need water, and pipelines always leak, it turns out. It turns out they always leak. And so Greenpeace tries to make them safer and fight them. And, well, right now, they're using this thing. Greenpeace organizations are going to go to trial on a SLAPP lawsuit that could redefine protest rights, right? So, again, this is all about taking away your freedom of speech, and they're using a thing called SLAPP. And let me just tell you what SLAPP is. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuits Against Public Participation. These types of cases masquerade as ordinary civil lawsuits, but their true purpose is to retaliate against those who speak out against harms. Such meritless lawsuits are meant to silence or bankrupt opponents, meaning protesters, by dragging defendants through a long, lengthy, expensive legal process. And so why do I tell you about this? Because North Dakota is set to become the battleground for one of the most consequential free speech cases in recent history. Now, the Trump administration keeps touting that free speech is back in the State of the Union. Free speech is back. So here's one way that corporations can take it away from you. Energy Transfer, the big oil corporation behind Dakota's Access Pipeline, is seeking $300 million in damages from Greenpeace USA and Greenpeace International, accusing these organizations of playing a central role in organizing the indigenous-led resistance to the pipeline back in 2016. That was the thing we were all a part of. The lawsuit is one of the largest strategic lawsuits against public participation, called SLAPP, ever filed, and one of the biggest cases to go to court in North Dakota. It began on the 24th of February. This case is a prime example of corporations abusing the legal system to silence critics and keep their operations secret, said the Greenpeace USA executive director. It is also a critical test of the future of the First Amendment, both freedom of speech and peaceful protest under the Trump administration and beyond. But we are fighting back, and we are not fighting back alone. So if you're MAGA and if you're a real lefty, you care about free speech. And Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have been screaming about free speech. In fact, he even went to Europe and chastised them for clamping down on free speech. So that's why this matters. So you might not give a shit about this particular pipeline, but what it implicates free speech for everybody. Okay, like for the truckers. Like let's say we had a trucker protest here, and like they had in Canada, eh? That would affect us. So anything you want to protest, that's why this is bad. So I already told you. So let me bring in Steven Donziger. He's an American attorney. You might know him because he won a $9.5 billion judgment against Chevron while representing farmers and indigenous people affected by oil drilling in Ecuador's Lago Agrio oil field. At Chevron's behest, he was charged with criminal contempt and placed under house arrest for almost 3 years because he won that lawsuit. He is currently working with Greenpeace. So let's bring him in. He's currently working with Greenpeace. Let's bring in. Hi, Steven. Welcome back to the show.
Great to see you, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
So how did that work out, by the way? Are you now completely cleared, or what happened?
Well, we're talking about SLAPP suits. So what happened to me is I got hit with like probably the biggest SLAPP suit ever in this country filed against a single person. Chevron used 150 lawyers,
Jeez.
The Gibson Dunn law firm, against me. And I've been dealing with it for years. So the hard part is over. I'm still not out of it yet because they refuse to let me leave the country and do my job as a human rights advocate. They took my passport as a so-called sanction because I wouldn't give them my confidential case file, which would have put at risk the lives of my clients down in Ecuador. It's a longer story, but the bottom line is I still am being hit with certain kind of what I would call encumbrances to my life, such that I can't even leave the country, don't have a passport. And so it's not over yet, but the case is still very viable, and I've gotten through it. And obviously their main goal, which was to silence me, failed. And I'm doing great, writing a book and moving forward, and Chevron still faces enormous risk. But what's interesting, and getting back to the Greenpeace case in North Dakota, I was out there last week. I organized this committee of prominent lawyers to monitor this trial because it's so critically important to our country and to the world in terms of free speech, in terms of the climate movement, because this is an effort into talking about free speech by a fossil fuel company, in this case, the Energy Transfer Pipeline Company, to violate the free speech rights of Greenpeace. Now, you might have different opinions about Greenpeace. Many people do, but really that's not the point here. The model they're using to try to silence Greenpeace affects everyone, the free speech rights of everyone in this country, regardless of your political orientation. So while Donald Trump is talking up the idea that free speech is back in America, the reality is it still depends, it's still situational. And the fact is these companies, in this case, Energy Transfer, are able to, I think, abusively manipulate court systems, weaponize them against people they don't like to try to punish them for holding them accountable for their abuses. And it really is an intimidation play designed to scare the heck out of anyone who's even thinking about holding, Energy Transfer or the larger fossil fuel industry accountable for its pollution or for, its fossil fuel emissions that are harming the planet. That's what this is really about. And it's important people pay attention to this case. It has major, major free speech implications for everybody in this country.
And so, just to let you know how, so let's put it, if you're MAGA, just to back up a second, why all this stuff, all this lawfare. Now, you know how Trump was a victim of lawfare, right? 92 felony indictments, and one of them more ridiculous than the next. And the big one was the Jean Carroll case in New York, where they had to literally amend the Constitution of New York State so they could then prosecute Donald Trump in a civil case for an alleged rape that took place 30 years ago. And the judge in that case who presided over that, guess who that judge was? The same judge who presided over him. So he's a super corrupt judge, and he put him on house arrest. Why? Because he won at the behest of Chevron, because he won a case against them in court. And so they went after him, just like they went after Donald Trump, and they find the most easily corrupted judges, and they got that same judge to preside over Donald Trump's case in New York. So just to let you know, that's why this matters. That's why it's about the weaponization of law against the free speech of people, and people using free speech protests, and people using the courts to find redress for their injuries from big oil or any corporation. So if you're MAGA, this should really matter to you. And this guy's been a victim of the same judge that Donald Trump was. So now we move on to, doesn't matter how you feel about Greenpeace, as he said. As Steven said, it doesn't matter if you're for Greenpeace or against. It could be Greenpeace today. It could be the truckers tomorrow. It could be any kind of protesters the next day. Could be people protesting abortion. It could be people protesting gender affirming care. It could be any of that stuff. It could be people protesting against biological males and female sports. So this is about making sure that everybody has freedom of speech. So, and again, it's the freedom of speech that needs protection, is the speech that people don't like. And in this case, it's corporations don't like, and we all know corporations run the government. So they're saying this is about something that happened in 2016 with a pipeline that was going to go and potentially pollute water of Native Americans. And there was a spontaneous, so they're saying that Greenpeace is responsible for those protests. Yeah. And where does the SLAPP part come in?
So let me tell you just quickly what happened back in 2016 so people remember. People remember all those pictures of encampments in North Dakota in the summer and the winter. There's snow on the ground. There's thousands and thousands of people protesting this pipeline. Why were they protesting? Really a couple of reasons. One is the route of the pipeline was crossing indigenous land of the Standing Rock Sioux without the permission of the tribe. That's number one. Number two is the pipeline was inherently dangerous. Pipelines leak.
They
And
always
they were
leak.
concerned. They were concerned that the pipeline would leak on their territory, contaminate their lands, and more importantly, their water sources. There's a lake there, a giant lake called Lake Oahu, that is the source of water for not only the tribe, but actually millions of other people in North Dakota. This isn't just a tribal issue. It's an environmental issue that affects a whole ton of people out there. And there was a big opposition to the route of this pipeline, and there was a deeper opposition to just the pipeline being built anyway, given, the climate crisis, et cetera, et cetera. So this all went down in 2016, and Energy Transfer, the company that is now suing Greenpeace, using the same law firm that Chevron used to go after me, initially sued the chief of the Standing Rock Sioux at the time. This is in 2016. And only when they took this aggressive action, trying to claim he was somehow violating the pipeline company's rights by leading these protests, did the tribe put out a call for help. And 300 indigenous groups came to the area to help them protest this pipeline. Now, Greenpeace came as well, but Greenpeace had like 6 people there. But there were 100,000 people there. Greenpeace had almost no role in these indigenous-led protests, but the company went after Greenpeace. Greenpeace is really a stand-in for the frustration of this company. They have a billionaire CEO, Kelcy Warren, and they're trying to destroy Greenpeace as a stand-in for the entire climate movement, the entire indigenous rights movement. This guy Warren doesn't want people criticizing his company or getting in the way of his destructive pipelines that he's building all around the country. And as a result, he's spending tens of millions of dollars on legal fees. This has been going on, by the way, since 2017, this lawsuit. He's spending tens of millions in legal fees on this law firm that specializes in this kind of thing as a way to get back at the climate movement. Honestly, Jimmy, I don't think he cares whether he wins or loses. I mean, he's just winning by doing the case and dragging Greenpeace through this expensive litigation year after year, such that they're totally distracted from their core mission, which is to protect the environment. And they're dealing with a litigation that, in my opinion, is frivolous and really should have been dismissed a long time ago. That's my personal assessment. But we're out there monitoring the case, and I don't know, it's not really a trial. It's more like a weaponization of a court system to destroy a climate group.
Were they ever able to put that pipeline in?
Yes, the pipeline became operational in 2017. And just so you know, it runs from the upper part of North Dakota diagonally in a southeasterly direction all the way to Illinois, where it hits the Mississippi River, and the oil then gets taken down to the Gulf to be, refined and exported. It goes 1,700 miles. So it wasn't just North Dakota. There were protests in a whole host of states, but it became operational in 2017. And by the way, there's still litigation over whether it should be shut down because it doesn't have proper easements and permits, et cetera, but it is actually operational right now.
Has there been a case of it leaking so far?
Yes. So there was a report in court, which, to my, I'm furious about this, but the judge sealed this report after it was filed as a way to protect the pipeline company. But there was an expert report by a company called Exponent that analyzed how much drilling fluid, and this is harmful drilling fluid, it's a pollutant, leaked into this lake that people rely on for their drinking water. And they found that 1 million gallons had leaked from the pipeline into this lake. And that's on top of all sorts of reports of leaks from this pipeline in other states as it carries oil, again, from North Dakota down to Illinois. So yes, this company does not have a good track record. I mean, they pled guilty to 22 criminal violations of environmental law in Pennsylvania. And if you can believe this Energy Transfer, again, the company suing Greenpeace, was barred by the federal government from signing any contract with the federal government because of its serial dishonesty. So the company that is building the pipeline, the company that is suing Greenpeace is, in my opinion, an outlier company when it comes to the laws of this country. And, that sort of helps explain why they're spending, tens of millions of dollars on legal fees to go after Greenpeace in a case that they're just using to try to intimidate the whole climate movement and harass Greenpeace out of existence.
Now, it was predicted that the pipelines all leak. There's just no doubt about it. And I don't understand why they don't just refine the oil where it's extracted from. It must be cheaper for them to build a 1,700-mile pipeline than it is to just build a refinery where they're getting the oil from. And so they ship it down to the Gulf. And anyway, I'm skeptical of after COVID and after Russiagate and after many things. I'm skeptical of anything. I saw how the medical profession is completely corrupted. Medical journals, the FDA, the CDC, the WHO, everything from top to bottom through our corporate media. It's all owned by corporate interests that want to lie to you. And so I'm skeptical right now. I don't know if carbon. I don't know if carbon-based climate change is real or not. I'm not saying, but I do know that most of the things that people like Bill Gates, as he flies around the world in private jets, screaming about climate change and going to meetings with other people in their private jets, and then their prescription to fix climate change is that you have to live in a 15-minute city, eat bugs, and have an electric stove while they fly around, and they ban gas-powered lawnmowers, but not gas-powered jets. So all I'm saying is that the remedies that they're coming up with, I'm suspect of, to say the least. But that doesn't mean, even if you have that opinion, that doesn't mean that you should not be scared or concerned about what they're doing to Greenpeace. Greenpeace should be able to protest. People should be able to stand up against pipelines that are going to pollute the clean drinking water. And that's what this is all about. This is about people's right to have free speech and protest, and to fight back against a $1 billion or $100 billion companies to squelch the free speech rights of citizens. That's what this is about, and that's why everybody should care.
Yeah. And I don't know if you have more time. I just want to mention one very novel legal theory in this case that people need to be very aware of, because I think it's very dangerous. Okay. The company's theory as to why Greenpeace should pay it hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. Their basic theory is the protest delayed the operation of the pipeline, and the time of that delay cost them money, and they're trying to pin it all on Greenpeace. First of all, there's no damages. They're still making tons of money, and the delays really were very likely caused by other things that were happening, not by the protests. For example, the government didn't give them an easement that they needed, which delayed the pipeline for 6 months. Again, this makes me feel like this is really just an attack on free speech. It really isn't a real damages case. But they have a theory, this is the dangerous theory, that if you attend a protest, say you go to a protest, a peaceful protest, a legal protest, and there's 10,000 people there with you, and 2 people, excuse me, commit an act of violence, an illegal act of violence, then everyone there can be held liable, because they're at the protest, for the acts of the 2 people that were illegal. It is an incredibly dangerous theory that this company is advancing in this case.
So they could have put that, which I'm sure they would like to, on people at for instance, January 6th protests, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely true. And you can't. It's a total affront to the rule of law in any democratic society to impose collective criminal liability on an entire group of people, including the majority which did nothing wrong or illegal, just because some other people did, okay? And that's what this company is trying to do, and that's why we're saying, as trial monitors, that this is a lawsuit that attacks the First Amendment and the fundamental right to protest in this country. Because if they're saying that just by attending a protest, behaving peacefully, behaving legally, you can be held criminally liable, or be, have to pay millions of dollars of damages because there was some property destruction a few miles away, then we're in serious trouble as a country. And our rights to free speech, our rights to protest, our First Amendment rights are even more eroded than they have been, in the recent past.
And we know,
so people need to be really aware of this and engage in this process. And one final point, Jimmy, protect Greenpeace. This is a critical moment. I don't care if you don't give a darn about the environment. I don't care if you think that climate change is fake. I mean, I believe it's real, to be clear. But no matter how you feel about these issues, we all have to agree that the right to protest, free speech, is absolutely critical. And that really is what's under attack here by this pipeline company.
So if they can do what you just laid out, if they can make anybody who attends a peaceful protest responsible for the violence committed by a handful of people, we all know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to send people to those peaceful protests, meaning the corporations or the FBI, and they're going to have what they call agent provocateurs that create violence. Like the WTO back in the late 90s. This is well documented. They did it with the Black Lives Matter. Pallets of bricks laid out everywhere, and cops allegedly being seen breaking windows. And of course, we all know that there were FBI assets in the crowd at January 6th that were instigating violence and committing violence. So we all know this. This is there. So if they can do this, they can do this to anybody. And that's why it's important.
Exactly. I'm going back out to North Dakota next week. By the way, if people want to learn more about this, we have a little website called trialmonitors.org. We operate independent of Greenpeace, to be clear. We're independent lawyers. And then Greenpeace has a website. You can go to their website and learn about their point of view about this trial. But I'm going back out there. And, it's not just Energy Transfer. Frankly, it's big law. It's the legal profession. These law firms make tons of money doing these unethical cases to try to shut down free speech. And I think this is an example of that in action. And I was out there all last week watching it. And frankly, I was appalled at the way this case was structured by a judge who, frankly, I think is in way over his head. He openly admits there's never been a bigger civil case in the entire history of the state of North Dakota. And there are people coming to watch this case from literally all over the world. There's people there from Europe. There's law students who drove all the way from Washington. They go to Georgetown Law School so they could watch it. And they have descended on the small town with a judge who usually handles cases involving fence disputes in a rural state. And there's major First Amendment issues. There's major evidentiary issues. These are complicated legal issues. And the judge has never dealt with these issues before. And he openly admits he basically admits on the bench he's in over his head. And what's ended up happening is the powerful corporate law firm that's representing the pipeline company, from what I witnessed, seems to be exercising an enormous amount of influence over what's happening in that courtroom. It is not a fair trial. Most of the members of the jury have openly admit they have ties to the fossil fuel industry. Nothing wrong with that inherently. They work there. They're trying to make a living. But it's really unfair that they're judging a case where an environmental organization is opposed to fossil fuel expansion, and they're now on the dock for hundreds of millions of dollars of damages. As a matter of fact, a survey of the county, it's a county of 33,000 people. It's called Morton County in North Dakota. A pretrial survey of the county found that 97% of residents in the county openly admitted they could not be a fair and impartial juror in this case, yet the judge refused to move it to another county, which I think is wrong and probably will be grounds for a reversal on appeal if Greenpeace loses, which they're likely to do, again, because this trial is not fair.
Okay, and tell me the name of that website again, so people, if they want to go check it out.
It's trialmonitors.org, trialmonitors.org. And on that website, it's not Greenpeace's website. It's just a lot of documents about the trial, news stories about the trial. The other thing, Jimmy, is the judge has tried to really deny public access to the trial. Normally, big high-profile cases in North Dakota are broadcast. Court TV is broadcast cases. He has completely shut off the live stream both to the public and to the media. The only way to really see what's happening is to physically go to this isolated area of the country and be physically in court. But, you know, the good news is many media outlets have gone out there to cover it. There's probably 15, 20 reporters in the court. So it's getting a fair amount of press coverage. The more important thing is that the public know about it and get engaged, because I find in my experience, when the public is watching a trial that's unfair, the very act of showing the judge that it's being watched can change behavior for the better, so the trial becomes more fair. So it's very important, I think, for people to get engaged. Again, it's trialmonitors.org. No matter how you feel about Greenpeace, I know everybody cares about free speech. It's important to protect free speech to help protect Greenpeace from this unwarranted attack by this pipeline company.
Steve Donziger, thanks for coming on and letting everybody know about this very important free speech issue, maybe one of the top free speech issues of our day today, or our time. So appreciate you doing that, and thanks for your work. And please keep us up to date.
Will do. Thank you for having me, Jimmy. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Come see us do stand-up in Baltimore, Hartford, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, and San Jose, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for the tickets.